So early on, Shane Beamer has positioned himself as a one of us kind of coach, as a South Carolinian, as someone fans should trust to give the program to. And think about what that did to this fan base. Let's step back for a second. Will Muschamp, when he came to South Carolina, definitely gave it his best shot. I don't think he came in here with, plans of not succeeding. I definitely think he gave it his best shot and really tried to get things to work out at South Carolina. But throughout his time at Carolina, it felt like an outsider was coming in and taking control of the program, and not somebody with prior knowledge or somebody with a history or somebody with a love for the state or for the program or for the university or for the city. It was probably mentioned a million times that Will Muschamp played football at Georgia, that he played safety at Georgia, that he had an interception in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, that he played, I think he was a team captain. I think that I've even known, without even looking up, I already know the years. He played at Georgia from 1991 to 1994. Of course, now somebody's going to fact check, and I'm going to be wrong about that. But you saw that graphic so many times. Will Muschamp, safety, played at Georgia, 1991, 1994. That he was from Georgia. He's from Rome, Georgia, that he grew up in Georgia. That his offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo, played at Georgia, that he coached at Georgia. Mike Bobo was coached at Georgia, I think, over 20 years. That the offensive coordinator before him played at Georgia, Brian McClendon. It very much felt like a bunch of Georgia guys that didn't get the job in Athens, or things didn't work out in Athens, or they couldn't be in Athens, so they all ended up in Columbia. And that was, of course, not the case at all. It wasn't like, I feel like we would know. I feel like somebody would have reported this by now if Will Muschamp or Brian McClendon was actively trying to get out of Columbia to go to Athens. Obviously, that was not the case, but the optics and the vibe was very much, we can't be in Athens, so we have to be in Columbia. And then when Will Muschamp's son commits to Georgia, when his son is the starting quarterback at Hammond, private school in Columbia, and he is being recruited by Colorado State, I think Boston College, I think there was a couple of options. And again, I'm so glad that he made the decision that was best for him, decision that for him moving forward, he could go to a school that he wanted to be at. But optics-wise, when your own son commits to Georgia, goes to Athens, goes to the SEC East rival, goes to a school that your dad played at, that your dad's now coaching at Carolina, son, why don't you go to Georgia, play for Uncle Kirby and continue on the family legacy. I'm not saying that's what it was, but that's what it looks like. So it just added to this narrative that Muschamp was an outsider. He lives out on Lake Murray. Nothing wrong with living out on Lake Murray. I don't know where Shane Beamer's going to live. He might live even farther in Lake Murray. I don't know. But Muschamp didn't live in Columbia. Just everything, it was almost like even little things just started adding up. Just everything about that staff, about this era, about Muschamp, it just felt like a placeholder. Didn't feel like somebody really set roots here, that they really wanted to win here, that they didn't really want to coach in Columbia, they didn't really want to coach Carolina. So Shane Beamer coming in and hiring a staff full of Carolina guys, either South Carolina natives or they grew up Carolina fans or they played at Carolina. So Shane Beamer is molding his image as a South Carolinian. And that's huge. It's rejuvenated this fan base. And what it's also going to do, and it's going to start doing, is it's starting to build this us against the world mindset. Think about this. Shane Beamer was, depending on who you ask, not a viable head coaching option anywhere else in the country. I mean, I think I heard that 3 million times, either on message boards or on Twitter or on Feinbaum or whatever you were tuning into. The narrative was, well, nobody else wanted Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer isn't a viable head football coach option because if he was, why is this his first head coaching position? Why is this his first head coaching job? First of all, I don't know if this is actually his first offer as a head coach. But regardless, that was the narrative. Regardless if it's true or not, that's the narrative. So when he is hired, the national media is questioning it for the most part. I mean, Chuck Oliver in Atlanta basically laughed on air about the hire. And I like Chuck Oliver. I like listening to him when I can. But he literally was laughing on air about South Carolina hiring Shane Beamer. Meanwhile, a couple days later, Auburn hires Boise's head coach, who hasn't been in the South once, doesn't know what a grit is, and he thinks it was a great hire. So, we'll take it with a grain of salt what Chuck Oliver thinks. But Carolina fans saw this, and they continue to see this. So at the same time, they are seeing, on the one hand, Shane Beamer loving the state, loving this program, loving the school, loving Carolina, loving Columbia. The same time they're seeing that, on the other hand, they're seeing the media outside of the state just dogging the hire. And as much as it drives me up a wall when he does it, and I hate continuing to bring comparisons, and I know a lot of you already know where I'm going with this, but that's what happened at Clemson. Dabo Swinney definitely built a culture of us against the world. And as annoying as it is, as untrue as it is, it's worked. So if Shane Beamer is able to keep this offseason momentum rolling, and if Carolina is able to start winning ball games, this fan base is going to rally behind Shane Beamer in an unbelievable way. In a way that hasn't really been seen before. Because the state and so many people within it and the fans within the state, so many of them have that I'll show you, I'll prove you wrong mentality. Oh, you don't think I can do it? Okay, let me show you. Oh, you think I'm a loser? Let me prove you wrong. I mean, I can tell you this. I grew up in Charlotte. First time I was in South Carolina for an extended period of time was at Wofford when I went there for 4 years of college. Then I went to South Carolina for law school, and I've been in Columbia since then. But even in the brief time of being in the state, one of the things, and a lot of people are going to be like, man, that's nerdy as anything, but I was on the mock trial team at South Carolina Law School. And when Carolina mock trial would compete against North Carolina or Georgia Law School, I would want to beat them because I knew the North Carolina kids and the Georgia kids, whether they actually were or not, were thinking, oh man, here comes South Carolina. Oh man, South Carolina. What's their rank again? Where do they put kids to practice law? What kind of law firms are they going to? So I'd go in there. This guy that was from Charlotte, first time he was in South Carolina for an extended period of time was 2013. And I would go into these things being like, South Carolina, I'm going to rep this law school, the state, have a I'll show you mentality. If you take that with so many people and so many examples in this state and apply it here with Shane Beamer and what he's building, things could get very interesting for Carolina. So yes, it's great that Shane knows this program, the history of the program, the recruiting blueprint, and those things work in nicely with also knowing the state, the people in it, the culture, the fan base. Because part of the recruiting pitch, part of what you're seeing on social media, on Twitter, is a head football coach selling the passion. I mean, the amount of times they've shown, or retweeted or shown videos of Williams-Brice packed to the gills. Back pretty much a year ago to today, Josh Pate from 24/7 Sports. Late Kick with Josh, I think, is the official title for his show on 24/7 Sports. It's on YouTube. Very informative, all things college football, but a lot of it's SEC football because that's where he got his start. He started in Columbus, Georgia, covering SEC football. He ranked 1 through 14 the SEC football stadiums and their game day atmospheres. Coming in at number 3 out of 14 behind, I think, LSU and I forget who else he had, maybe Alabama. Coming in at number 3, and of course, all the people outside South Carolina, what are you talking about? Williams-Brice, what are you talking about? South Carolina's a good game day. Number 3, according to Josh Pate, who's been to all these big-time games, who's been to all these other stadiums, put Williams-Brice Stadium, game day atmosphere, number 3. Why? Because he went to the 2019 Alabama game. 2019 Alabama game, South Carolina was a 24-point underdog. Alabama, I think, was the number 1 team in the country, coming off a national championship. South Carolina at that time was 1-1. They had just lost to North Carolina. Not an inspiring-looking football team. He came to Williams-Brice Stadium and he said, this is something special. And this is why it's so important that Shane's bottling this up and trying to get this energy in the right direction and trying to get things fired up in this fan base, is because Josh Pate for 24/7 Sports was like, can you imagine what I would have experienced and what that stadium would have been like if it wasn't a blowout to a heavily favored, top-ranked Alabama team? Could you imagine if this was a 2-point spread, top 25 game, Carolina's in the top 25, night game? And I know a lot of, I haven't experienced it because I wasn't in South Carolina yet. I wasn't going to games yet. But I know a lot of you have experienced that, and I've heard a lot about it. Williams-Brice is an important part of the puzzle, and it's not only important for recruiting, but it's important because this fan base, this state, they're ready for excitement, they're ready to get fired up, and they're ready to, I'll prove you, I'll show you type moments. So the reason why Josh Pate, to the chagrin or to the surprise or whatever of all these other, of the Georgias, of the Floridas, the reason why Josh Pate says South Carolina and Williams-Brice is one of the best atmospheres in college football is because this fan base and the people of South Carolina are so ready for a winner that even when there isn't a chance for it, they're still going to show up just to see what's going to happen, just to get fired up, just to support the team, support their state, support their program, support their school, support their city. So yes, it's great that Shane Beamer has this knowledge of Carolina football, that he was here with Spurrier, that he knows the recruiting blueprint. But just as important are those things that we just mentioned: the state, the people in it, the culture, the fan base, the city. And I'll be honest, even though I put back in November that I thought it was important the head coach know the state and the fan base, I didn't think Shane Beamer would energize the fan base as much as he already has. Gamecock fans finally feel like they have one of their own as the head coach. And early on, that's a good identity to have heading into a rebuild, heading into the first season of what could be a challenging time, but what could also be a very exciting time. Gamecock fans feel like they have one of their own. South Carolina football fans, South Carolina graduates, Carolina alumni finally feel like they have a South Carolinian, rightfully or wrongly, whether the facts support that or not, finally feel like they have somebody on their team, on their side, who's one of their own. So that's what I have for y'all this week. I always appreciate y'all tuning in. It's been so encouraging, and even hearing what you don't like or what you think I got wrong. I love hearing that as well. Everybody's been very supportive, and I just love hearing y'all's thoughts. So as always, share with friends. I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much for supporting. And as always, forever to thee.